Ugly or beautiful? Who does better?
Hello and welcome to the show. Well, many people believe that unconscious bias exists in all forms of life. And when it comes to judging a person, sometimes we can do the same, not just about their skills and what we see on paper, but how we view their image. Yes, do we have an unconscious bias as to whether somebody is deemed to be beautiful or ugly? Well, the actual fact is all about the hidden truth. If on the outside you're ugly as sin, then your inner beauty may be hidden. But if you're ugly deep within, then you're the face that should be forbidden. Alternatively, if on the outside you're ugly as sin, then your inner beauty may be forbidden. But if you're ugly deep within, then you're the face that should be hidden. Well, Clergyman Pete, I know that somebody such as yourself, who is suave, handsome, debonair,
Yes.
doesn't suffer in the same way as others as ugliness.
No.
But let me ask you, be a man of the cloth, how do you judge people who might be deemed to be ugly?
Well, I tell them just to get out of my sight. That's what. The problem
Yes.
with the response to ugliness is it does tend to be unconscious bias against them. To use the language of the politically correct studies of things like racism and white privilege, unconscious bias is when you are biased, but you don't notice it, but you betray it in the way that you behave and certain things that you say. So that's my issue with it. If I'm prejudiced against someone who is ugly, it's often below the radar. However, I'm in a good position as for all Christians who are being able to have the Bible speak very clearly against this. The reference I'm going to quote is 1 Samuel 16, verse 7, from the early part of the Bible. It says this: But the Lord said to Samuel, oh, by the way, just a brief comment, Samuel was choosing the next king, so that's why he was trying to judge which person was best. The Lord said to Samuel, Do not look at his appearance or at his physical stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as man sees, for the man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Now, interestingly, in this particular case, the Lord is talking about someone that Samuel has spotted who was attractive. He was tall and impressive and attractive. And the Lord rejected him, saying, I don't look at that, I'm looking at the heart. But notice what the verse also acknowledges, that people, men, as it says here, meaning mankind, men, people, humanity, does look at the human appearance, but the Lord, in talking to the prophet Samuel, is saying don't. So it's not a good idea because you're being fooled by something. It's a bit like only choosing tall people. Say, for example, you're used to being a basketball coach, and I'm going to always choose tall people, but in fact you've changed, I don't know, and trying to get a jockey to win the Grand National. You want someone who's a bit shorter, and so therefore you are judging incorrectly. And that's, I think, my approach to it, is that I try and guard against being tricked by someone's appearance into favouring them, in the same way as I wouldn't want to be tricked by other irrelevant characteristics.
Well, I'm going to come from a business perspective, and
Yeah,
I'm going
sure.
to say that there's the good and there's the bad. I'm going to start with the bad. And in business, and we see this in many professions, such as fashion and the beauty industry, that we have quite noticeably seen stereotypical imagery of people, whether they are tall, as you say, whether they have perfect features. Now, the fact is that if they fit a certain look, that would be deemed to be somebody who's attractive, beautiful. And if you don't basically match to that, you are a grade down. Effectively, you are not as attractive. But what can often happen is that whether it be that people are influenced by advertising, we have seen that many people have criticized certain industries for overplaying a stereotypical type of image. But in business, what has happened, and I can see on the good side, is that many businesses have recognized that actually there is this sense of unconscious bias. And a lot of people have been trying to sort of eliminate this unconscious area where you may have a barrier against a certain type of person. Now, many people have talked quite extensively and openly about skin color and race. That's widely talked about, but ironically, not about things such as if you're ugly. So, for example, if a candidate comes in for a particular role, imagine it was an accountant role, for example, and somebody wasn't deemed to be fitting a stereotypical type of image of somebody who might be deemed to be physically attractive. Is there something that could influence your decision as a moderator, perhaps, in the interview process? Would that mean that you could be influenced because of the way they look? Some people would say yes, and studies have shown that this is the case. And so what a lot of companies have been doing throughout the world now is trying to educate people that you don't judge people purely on their appearance. In fact, ironically, this actually has occurred even in the fashion industry, where we've started to see people come from all forms of life. They may be short, they may be fat, they may be thin, they may be black, they may be white, and so on. So I think the point about being ugly, what is now deemed to be truly ugly, one of the things that often is brought up is if somebody has a deformity, so a boil or a blotch or a very large nose or some kind of extremity, should we think lesser of that person? And the answer, of course, obviously is no, but it is strange that it does exist in society. But what is good is that people are beginning to recognize that it's there. Studies of the past, 10, 20, 30 years ago, weren't as deep on the psychology. So many people, whether it be in business or even society, probably openly wouldn't admit that they had a prejudice against somebody who was deemed to be ugly. But I come back to the business side is that there is a good thing that we're seeing a trend change. So there is a good thing, Clergyman Pete, that holds quite well for us, I guess. We were often described as the perfect faces for radio or perfect faces for podcasts.
Yes, we have the right career. Let's put it that way.
But do you? I want to ask you. Let's just talk to the business side of it. Do you think that now that many organisations, perhaps now, and you're seeing this in a world that is rapidly changing because of COVID-19, but we're actually also seeing an attitude change where we're a bit more accepting, and we have to be responsible individuals not to judge people simply because they've got a certain look. But are we really perhaps trying to sort of create utopia? Is the real instinct here that we're never going to get away from the fact that if we don't like the look of someone, maybe we won't like them anyway?
Yes, well, I think that that is the case. I think that the move to more online working, where you're on a Zoom or other video call apparatus, which are also available, they have features on them. Zoom, particularly, I know, has a feature where you can beautify your face, and it sort of makes a little bit soft focus looking, and that's because people are still judging you on your appearance, even though it's a 2D representation of it. So I don't see it changing that much. That because it's unconscious, we can't really help but judge people by their appearances, but we can take steps. In terms of business, we can make sure that some of the judgment, some of the perhaps weeding out of unsuitable candidates is done without knowing what the person looks like. And that's, I suppose, if you're just looking through CVs without pictures attached, that's reasonably easy. So there are steps that you can take, however, as I was saying, to make sure that you're not simply weeding out people because they're not attractive. So, however, I think what we really need to do is simply accept that this is what happens. This is human nature, whether we like it or not. Let's just be realistic. Yeah, things will change. We hope that going through a difficult time together, such as a pandemic, will bring us closer together. But human nature remains the same, and I see us still having to cope with this as long as we remain human. So, I think that's an issue that will never go away.
Is it now that just simply we have to accept nature's way, or is it that actually what we should be saying is, and this is the funny thing, because I wouldn't like to necessarily cast aspersions, but should we say if we look at the list of the most wealthy people in the world, male or female, I wouldn't necessarily say I would see them on the front cover of a glamour magazine.
No, this is an important point. Yes, it's not the case that beautiful people are the most successful. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that in general, that more attractive people get better jobs, so they earn more. They're more likely to get into a happy relationship. Actually, the statistics show that attractive people are less prone to depression as well. So it's overall a win if you're attractive. It's good for you in that it is some form of ability or wealth. So what you need to guard against, this is where it's bad for you. Having money and having resources is good for you. But if you're very wealthy, then you can be spoilt, and that same thing can happen to people who are physically attractive because of these advantages. It's a question of guarding against it and knowing that it's there rather than attempting to change it. Although, of course, you can change your appearance, you can make yourself more attractive, but that's a different issue, really. In that we're talking about what happens when you are attractive.
Yes, and it's true that depending on your dress sense, your choice of cosmetics maybe, or how you choose to either wear a beard or not wear a beard, smooth-faced or not, and that also goes for the men as well. But yes, I mean, the fact of the matter is that we do tend to judge people on their appearance. Yes, now, I come back to this point. Yes, there is a natural instinct to judge people, and everybody has a different view of what is attractive. But does it not come back to this point about when we're at school, in the sense of what we're told is deemed to be attractive or unattractive? So is the education really to start at the beginning and continue that education? Because it's all very well getting and waiting to the fact that you're the managing director and telling somebody to go on a corporate course for unconscious bias, when actually your entire background in life has been instinctively to judge people, and they probably have.
Yes, I agree. It has to start early because training is the issue here. Being good, in biblical terms, becoming good is becoming such that behaving in a good way is second nature. It's practice. It takes practice, and so practicing not to be biased against ugly people or biased in favour of attractive people, as the prophet Samuel was tempted to be, is something you need to learn from an early age. And I think teaching the Bible, I think, is important, and the principles of fairness and justice that arise from that. And absolutely, education from an early level. But you're acknowledging then that it is the case that you will have that natural prejudice. And so once you've done that, you could treat being attractive as being a bit like an ability or a characteristic or a skill. When you put on your CV, what are your best qualities? Well, I'm a bit of a stunner. It might be one of them, or it might be, I'm hideously ugly.
I always put that at the top of my CV.
Yes, yeah. Well,
or resume, as the Americans
quite rightly too, as long as you don't include a photo. But I think the thing about it is, if you regard your attractiveness as being sort of part of you, part of your personality as though if you're attractive, you morally deserve it, and if you're ugly, well, it's something wrong with you, then that can be very detrimental either way.
Yes.
But if you regard it as simply as an ability, like height or intelligence or whatever it might be, then you simply regard it as something that you can be used to help you. If there's nothing wrong with using your attractiveness or your ugliness, it might be something that you need to counter. Maybe we're wearing a good fitting suit and that sort of thing.
Yes. Well, just to sort of close out this particular topic, there was one other area that I wanted to explore, and this probably plays a little bit more into your area, which is about relationships, in the sense that, it is concerning that we see around the world a high divorce rate. Now, there are many different reasons why. It's because perhaps people are not matched in their personalities, and ultimately that probably is because the people have come to some impasse on something, whether it be about behavior, about their view on children, and many other different things. But it's reasonable to say, would it not be, that actually a lot of people tend to come to relationships simply on the surface, the fact that they find somebody physically attractive. Now, that's not necessarily a wrong thing,
no,
but it comes back to also the inner beauty that we alluded to at the beginning of the show, official cosmetics.
Well, the main way that this can be emphasised is by just giving emphasis towards being friends. You see, if they're to see each other in the right ways, to see it as people who are planning to be spending a lot of time together. Now, it's interesting that no matter how attractive or ugly someone is, if you spend a lot of time with them, you just get used to it, Mark. And so the attractiveness or lack of it is not going to be the issue in your day-to-day life. So to try and say, well, how good are they as a friend? That's the main way that I put it, and get them to see it in that way, and therefore to judge, are they really going to want to spend the rest of their lives together? And particularly as, of course, people's attractiveness doesn't necessarily last forever.
Yes. Well, it doesn't. And it's not all about materialistic things. What is attractiveness? Is it just about the size of your wage packet? Is it about the materialistic things such as the mansion you live in? Clergyman Pete, I guess that you've managed to succeed on many fronts. Well, listeners, why not let us know? Do you have a view as to how maybe a relationship went wrong because you maybe chose a partner simply because they were attractive? Or maybe that you've got some other issues, that maybe you're living with somebody who's actually just ugly as a person. Well, let us know. Why not log on to markandpete.com and we want to hear your thoughts. Well, join us again for more topical topics next time with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark.